So I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of the passage that we brought momentum home on back in March in 2017, just to give you a bit of an idea of what it was like and the route that we actually took. And the passage started at a really lovely place called Kamandi, and in it Kamandi is a hotel, which is a beautiful hotel to visit, and there's also a hotel and a marina there, and I had a little bit of work done on the boat. Came from Kamandi out into the Huon River. From the Huon River, we followed that south, and then we followed southeast past Port Signet on our left-hand side there, and we headed down until we got into the D'Ancestre Channel. From there, we headed north through Great Bay. From Great Bay, we passed Kettering on our left, and then we headed up further north into the Derwent River and then into a marina at Hobart. We spent a bit of time there. We were waiting for weather windows. We were doing some work on the vessel. I was waiting to organise some people to help me bring the boat back. It ended up being 4 weeks. Hobart, we then headed back south into the Derwent River, down past the Iron Pot. And then we came up into Frederick Henry Bay. Our intention at the time was to actually do the inland waterway passage, which is really only suitable for boats that draw less than 2 metres, and momentum draws 1.9. So this was a really exciting opportunity to look at some really interesting inland waterways. So we came up to Denali. Now, Denali is an interesting place. There's a very, very narrow channel. It's very narrow leading into the channel. You've got to have the tides just right, and you've got to be talking to the bridge operator at Denali because he has to stop the traffic and swing that bridge for you. That channel brings you out into Blackman's Bay, and Blackman's Bay is another really interesting area to go into. Again, it's a very shallow waterway through here, and you need to follow the channel markers very, very closely. We had a couple of interesting moments there where we just rounded the point here, the starboard channel marker, and we touched bottom. Managed to get the vessel off, and then as we came around the point further, there's a couple of lead marks here that you pick up to head out on. Well, we took the lead marks, but unfortunately we ran aground again and we had to get the boat off, and then what we did is made our way right over to as far as we could on near the shoreline, and there was deep water there. We were only about 2 or 3 metres off the shoreline, and we followed that deep water out. In Marion Bay, we virtually headed north now, and we headed towards Maria Island, into the Mercury Passage, past Tribunna on our left, and we were heading north up to Shooten Island, which is a really lovely place to go and visit. We passed through Shooten Island about 11 o'clock, or Shooten Passage at 11 o'clock at night. The great winds coming off the top of this mountain here on the area just north of Shooten Passage. We caught that, we sailed north, we continued to head north until we got up to St Helens, the inlet for St Helens. Interesting again, most of the guidance for yachts is not to go into St Helens because you won't get in, and that's probably true too. Even though I draw 1.9 metres, I was lucky I had a fellow who had good local knowledge, fisherman, and he managed to talk me through into St Helens, which was really lovely to go and see. The key to that was staying to the northern shoreline as close as you possibly can until you pick up the inland channel markers. But if you follow the channel markers outside St Helens, you'll run aground. So that was the advice that I received from him, and we came in and out of there without any further touching bottom. We headed then to the northern part, or the northern tip of Tasmania. Across the Banks Straits, and we came up to Cape Barren Island. We could see Cape Barren Lighthouse, however it was dark. It was dark by the time we actually got there. We didn't see any of Flinders Island. We missed that, and we missed Babel Island, but we continued our passage north. We had a shifting wind that was shifting from the northeast round to the north, so it kept forcing us further west on our passage. We had planned to go straight to Gabo Island up here, but we ended up, just so we could sail, we had to sail further west, and then during the evening. 2-day, 1-night crossing to get across from Flinders Island. So ours at this particular point in time was relatively uneventful, although I have had eventful experiences through there in the past. So we headed north to pick up Gabo Island. We saw Gabo Island, and then we passed Eden to port. We decided we'd go further up the coast because the weather was good, and we went up to another really lovely port, which is Bermagui. We pulled in there, and we decided to stay there overnight because there was a very strong southerly coming through the next day. And that particular little port is really, really lovely. Lovely entrance to it as well. We tied up against a really nice catamaran that was heading up towards the Solomon Islands, or Norfolk Island and Solomon Islands. So that was really interesting. Our overnight there with them. We then continue to head north, and the next major landmarks that you sort of pick up is Montague Island to starboard and Narooma to port. We continued north, and then we passed Bateman's Bay. Recognising Bateman's Bay, we headed on then to Jervis Bay. From Jervis Bay, we then headed north, picking up Wollongong, and then Wollongong really back into Sydney, and that was the passage. It took us 6 full days to get back, and we got in that evening, so we probably had an overnighter in Bermagui. So all up for 682 nautical miles. We probably could have done that in about 5 days if we hadn't stopped at Bermagui. But that was the overall passage. We did that in March, April of 2017. So I hope you enjoyed that little trip synopsis of the Port Huon back to Sydney Harbour. It was a wonderful trip, and we look forward to heading back down in the opposite direction very shortly. So stay tuned.